Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, V.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew. We interview people in creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
Today, we have with us Ben Juwono.
Hi!
Hello, hello.
Hey!
So, Ben, we've actually met for the very first time at Lightbox Expo 2022, which is so
Yes,
crazy.
that's like what, 2 months ago? A month ago? I can't remember anymore. Time passed so quickly.
Yeah, it was I remember it was like October 14th.
Jeez.
And
uh,
you've had an amazing career. You've been a board artist, a director, a supervising director, and now you're a co-producer, which is
yes.
crazy.
Yeah, it's
Boss man.
not yet. Getting there.
And the question I always like to ask our guests when I start is kind of like, did you always know you wanted to go into animation? When did you kind of like realize that it was something that you could do?
Okay, well, that's that's a whole long story. I did not always know I wanted to go into animation. I kind of I'm one of those people who kind of stumbled upon it and managed to survive in it. I moved here from Indonesia back in 2000, and back then it was just like I didn't even know animation industry exists. So I went to school for physics because physics was one of the few things that I could do well, and it's like, oh, if I can do it, if I'm pretty good at it, that means I like it, right? It's one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept pursuing that. So I went to grad school. I went to undergrad in physics. I went to grad school in physics until it got to a point where I was no longer good at it because physics is hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Physics is hard, and at one point you kind of hit a wall, and you can't uh, I I could not get any smarter.
I
And
mean,
that's
even though you say that, is Ben the highest educated guest that we've ever had on Creative Block?
I
The
have a
the most
master's in physics.
the highest
Wow.
degree in non-useful art information.
Except it
Like
means absolutely nothing. So, yeah, it's the probably the farthest education, but also the most useless one in this industry.
you're so
Uh,
good at making characters fall.
it's true.
And
I know exactly how to space it out to make sure that the acceleration of gravity is correct.
you're just trying to explain centrifugal force to somebody trying to like animate someone getting spun around.
Uh, but
You're
yeah,
like, we're
so
not shipping it until this formula is correct.
that's kind of what I do now. Like they just kind of like use me as like, is this still correct? And it's like, no, you just put like 3 + 5 = 8, even though it's supposed to be a formula of something, So I'm kind of like the first person the first filter to make sure that what's on the equation is at least close to being correct. I mean,
Mm.
a lot of this stuff is still fantastical, so there's really no need to be like fully 100% correct. But it's little remnants of the past. But anyway, so it was when I finally hit grad school, and I had to basically in physics, if you go into the PhD program, you spend the first 2 years taking classes, and after you take the classes, you are supposed to um, take 5 qualifying exams. And out of the 5 qualifying exams, I could only pass four. I could not pass one of them. And if you can't pass all five of them, they would not let you continue on to the research.
Mm.
So I basically what they did was that they terminated me. I failed
Well,
out of the program, and they give me a master's degree as kind of a pity. So that's what happens in academia. If you see people with masters in physics, that means they failed out of the PhD program. It does not mean that they are masters of physics.
And you were like,
Um,
screw this, I'm gonna do art now. I'm
well,
never doing math
no,
again.
I wish it was like that. It was actually very depressing because the whole it's kind of like I feel like it's a lot of people in the art industry are kind of the same way. Like you kind of go through high school and college, and you kind of like have one single direction. You have one path, And I was the same way. Like for me, it was just all physics. So when that physics is when I hit a wall, I was really depressed. Like, what am I gonna do? So so I started teaching physics for a couple of years just because that's the only job you can have with the master's in physics. You can't go into like the the engineering side of things because you need a PhD and stuff like that. And I did not have an engineering degree and all that stuff. So I barely could make a living. I could not, I had to move back in with my parents because teaching doesn't pay a lot and it's hard to live. And but thankfully, like I said earlier, I've been selling fan art at Artist Alley. Like I used to sell One Piece fan art at Anime Expo.
Hell yeah.
Heck
2000
yeah.
2007 through 2014, I was constantly selling at AX. And I think around 2011, some of my friends at the Artist Alley started getting into the industry. They started breaking into the industry. So they were like, hey, Ben, you should try out storyboarding. I think you'll be good at it because you like drawing and you've done comics. And at the time, I was like, what's storyboarding? I didn't even know the animation industry exists. I didn't know you could get a career in it.
Show me the equation for storyboarding.
Yeah. And it's just like, I was raised with the thinking, with the mindset that you can't make a career out of art, because when you hear art, you think like galleries and stuff like that. And those things are never really like never in my wheelhouse. So I took classes at Concept Design Academy in Pasadena, got some portfolio. Eventually I got a job as a storyboard revisionist on Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so and that's kind of where it started. So I literally stumbled upon it just because like I had nowhere else to go. I was rock bottom. So it's like, well, if there's a moment to pivot in my career, this is kind of it.
Yeah, I love that you had an unconventional education. I really, really love to have guests that have not gone to art school because it does show that you don't need to go to art school to get into animation. How old were you when you dropped out of your PhD, and how long did it take for you to land that first animation job? I like to highlight that for our audience, just to kind of see like how much time it takes to like, be looking for a job and then actually land it.
Yeah, I got kicked out of grad school in 2008. And I got kicked out of grad school in 2008. And then I started teaching physics around schools in Southern California for about 3 years before I finally took a storyboard class in 2011, and then I got my first job in 2012. I was 28 when I got my first job in the industry.
I love that too, because I think we have a lot of people who are like really worried and they're like, oh, well, if I don't land my first job at 20, then it's over for me. And it's like, no, you can get in at any time, right?
That's all in your head. It's kind of like, if I haven't accomplished this by 30, I'm a failure. It's like, I don't know, life continues past 30. And in fact, like I keep telling people, I'm 38 now, so I've been in the industry for 10 years. My 30s are the best decade of my life. You are finally free from the expectations that you need to do this and that before you're 30, because then you turn 30, so you kind of like, oh, I missed the boat, so now I just get to live my life, and
I just lie down in my grave.
It's very free. I am looking forward to retirement.
Aren't we all?
I mean, what if you end up getting a physics job at 50? I mean, like every single 20 years you're going to go into a completely different career.
No disrespect to physics, but I am never going back. It's like that Taylor Swift song. We are never ever getting back together.
It's the first physics diss track.
Oh my god, I love it. This is so funny. So, on your Spidey job, was that Marvel or Disney? Or was that the same studio?
That was before Marvel got bought by Disney. That was actually done at Film Roman. Half of the floor was Spidey, and the other half was Simpsons.
What?
Yeah, that was my first job. I was a storyboard revisionist.
First of all, can we recognize how crazy it is that you went from not having an art job to starting on Spider-Man, which is like some people's like dream job. Like that's I think that's a testament to how good you were at drawing, I guess.
Okay, I will just say, this was not the Spider-Man like Spider-Man freshman year Marvel Studios time. This was 2012. This was the ultimate Spider-Man low budget 4 week storyboard schedule, 2 weeks rough, 2 weeks clean.
I got you. Yeah.
Done on Photoshop with templates, no storyboard pro, and everything gets printed out on paper and gets shipped to Korea. That type of Spider-Man.
Some Stone Age Spider-Man.
Everything goes through sheet timing, the animation comes back, and it's just very procedural back then. I was hired because a friend so they had a storyboard position open. And then they had approached a friend of mine, a friend from Artist Alley, actually. But at the time, she had gotten a different job offer. So she passed on it, and she passed on my name. And what happened was that the director on Spider-Man was like, who's this guy? He has no art education. He has no experience. Nobody's ever heard of his name. So what they did was that they tested me. And I busted ass on that test, and I failed that test completely.
Really?
because I was very new to storyboarding. I didn't know what they're looking for. I just kind of drew everything really nicely, but like the filmmaking wasn't there, the shot choices wasn't there. There's a lot of jump cuts, there's a lot of bad staging and all that stuff. So the job was for a storyboard artist, and I was tested for a storyboard artist. And then when I turned in, so the test was basically kind of like a freelance thing, right? So they give you like 2 pages to do, and then you turn in your roughs, and then they give you notes, and then you have to clean it up. So when I turned in my roughs, I was so like, yeah, I did it, I did good. I turned in my roughs. I went to the office and gave it to my director. I haven't gotten hired at this point. And he looked at it, and then he sat me down, and then he took a thick stack of Post-its and just started reboarding the entire 2 pages that was my assignment on Post-its.
Just in front of you.
Just in front of me. It took him 2 hours. It took him 2 hours to do the whole thing. Just basically telling me, you got to do it this way, and then from here you cut to here because of this. So I came back home with a giant stack of Post-its that basically I just have to translate into clean drawings. And oh man, I was upset. I cried because I was like, that's it, I fucked it up. The entire thing got reboarded. But you know what, I got paid to do this, I gotta turn it in. So I took the thumbnails, took the posted drawings, and I basically bordered it following the posted drawings. And I turned it in, and I was like, thank you for the opportunity. Sorry, you have to redo this whole thing. I'm sorry, I'm still new to this and all that stuff. And then the guy basically said, look, you don't know what you're doing as a board artist, but you can draw. Do you want a revisionist position?
Oh, heck
so
yeah.
I got hired as a revisionist because at least I can draw. I can draw fast, and I can draw well. So I ended up getting hired as a revisionist to basically, because again, back then it's a low budget production. A lot of the stuff, they don't even have money to like get people in-house. So a lot of the pages got freelanced out, and it's that unit rate freelance, which is like $600 a page or something like that, even though the entire page is like full on action sequence. So what my first job was basically taking a lot of the freelance work and cleaning it up and making it work, which was painful, but it was also a lot of really good mileage for me, because then I get to learn from basically everyone who freelanced but didn't really have the time to like put in good work because it's their side game. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody has one of those jobs where you start it and there's like just, even though you're trying your hardest, there's something that other people can see that you don't. And there's this cognitive dissonance that you have to like break through and see like what they're seeing about your drawings that you aren't, or like, cause you're like, yeah, this is good. This is the best I can do. But like with, somebody's so much experience behind them. They can see a lot
Yeah,
of the
and
times things you can't.
at the time I didn't know because like that was literally my first job. So again, after that, like I started kind of learning and understanding like what is needed in that type of production on Spider-Man. And then I moved and then just going back to like my journey, I was a revisionist for a year, and then the following year, the crazy thing was that Legend of Korra was starting. I believe this was book 2 or book 3, I forgot. But Legend of Korra was starting back up, and they took everyone. They took
Oh,
everyone on Spidey. All the like board artists that I had like learned from the last year because I got hired in house. Chris Palmer, Adrian Barrios, Sol Choi, like all the board artists on that show. Kyle Shockley, all the good board artists on that show, not just all the good ones, every board is on that show basically got poached over to Korra. So they all moved to Korra, and I ended up becoming like the most senior board artist on that show after a year
yes.
as a revisionist. So they're like,
Yes.
you're the only one that stayed, so let's just promote you to boards. And you know what? I've actually made a successful career out of being the one that got left behind.
Oh, nice. Do you feel
Because
like a 1 year was did you feel comfortable moving up, or were you like nervous?
I was nervous, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never been moved up to a position and have it be like when I'm ready for it. Never. It's
Right.
always it's all there's and that's kind of the thing, right? You never really know when you're ready. So at that point, you might as well. People always ask like, how do I know when I'm ready? And the answer is like, you never know.
Mm,
But how do you know if you're supposed to take it or if you're supposed to pass on it? And
right.
to me, it's always just if you are, as long as it feels like something that is a challenge that you feel like you're ready to take on. You don't have to
Mhm.
be ready for the job, but you have to be ready for the challenge that the job presents. And if the challenge excites you, then definitely take the job. If the challenge does not excite you, then don't. Right? That's always been kind of
Yeah.
like my guiding principle. And at the time, it's like, of course, I wanted to move up, and I took the job. It was hard. And then after but back then I was like, I do want to be in action adventure and I do want to be in superhero shows because like that's like always the cool stuff. Avatar, not the movie Last Airbender, Avatar, like anime stuff, Justice League. That used to be the stuff that I'm just like really excited about. And then after like 3 episodes, 4 episodes on Spidey, basically just trying to find different ways for Spidey to beat up his enemies.
Hmm.
I got really sick of it, and I was just like, "That's it. I can't do action adventure anymore. Like this is just not for me. It's tough." And I was starting to lose inspiration.
Hmm.
But of course, like I managed to stick through the end of the season, and then after that, I got a job to board on Puss in Boots.
Oh
The
yeah.
the TV show, the Netflix show over at DreamWorks, and I was like, I've always wanted to work for DreamWorks, so I moved over to DreamWorks TV. Um, and because it was like, oh, this is comedy. I want to try comedy. I've never tried comedy,
Mm.
and I've always wanted to do like some more broad acting. And back then, it's like when you're on a superhero show, when you have Captain America can't do like this like broad acting and like be like funny type of thing. Like all the superheroes are very stoic, right? Very
Hmm.
superhero-y. So I took the DreamWorks job, went to Puss in Boots, and I was there boarding for about 8 months before one of the directors left. So there was a directing spot open. And again, it was another one of those where it's like, well, we like Ben's boards, and his boards have always made it in without a lot of problems. Let's promote him to director.
So this is something I like asking people that work in comedy boards. The thing about comedy is I feel like you do end up taking certain risks when you're trying to pitch jokes or gags or a funny way that something could happen, and scenes get scrapped all the time because you're kind of doing this vulnerable thing where you're like, here's what I think is funny, and like, you know, you got to give it your all to make it funny, and if they don't like it, then it gets scrapped. Do you have
Right.
an example, especially maybe even early on, of something that you boarded that you thought was, you know, really funny, but that it didn't make the cut, maybe?
Not a lot because I think the show itself was trying to be something that is the show itself was trying to be something that's more like action comedy. So it's not so much that, oh, I'm pitching gags, because a lot of it is already written in the script, right? And
Mhm.
it's different from something like I don't even know what's a good example. Something like SpongeBob. I feel like SpongeBob, a lot of it is like people being funny because they're funny and they come up with funny gags. Puss in Boots was basically had it, the whole thing was scripted, and so you kind of even if you're trying to come up with like new gags and jokes and stuff like that was not in the script, you kind of have to follow
Mhm, mhm.
the requirements of the scripts. And in a way, like the model of Puss in Boots kind of became like, you know how artists have styles?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
board artists don't really have a style, but I do think like we have some sort of filmmaking sensibility that is kind of our style.
Oh my
And
God, yes. I feel like
and
I could
Yeah.
talk about
Okay.
this for so long because
a
I feel
different
nobody,
episode.
right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
But
the thing is,
yes.
like, I feel like the sensibility and the demands of what the comedy is on Puss in Boots kind of became something that I kind of found a home in. I am not good at just coming up with gags. Like, again, just a sidebar, I did some work for the Grinch movie for Illumination. I did not get a credit for it because I guess I didn't do enough work that made it in. You know how it is with feature. A feature tends to be a little bit picky about that. But like
Right.
when I was doing about 8 months worth of work on the Grinch as a side job, I was doing like 15 hours a week type of thing. My job was to come up with gags. They would give me like, yeah, so in this sequence, the Grinch wanted this, but then there's this issue, come up with like multiple gags. And I was like, but what's the story of the movie? Just help us come up with gags. And I suck at that. I am awful at just coming up with stuff. However, something like Puss in Boots, when I'm given a parameter, you give me a script, and I kind of made a niche for myself where if you give me any script, even if the script is not like super well done, even if it's kind of boring, even if it's got problems, like I can find a way to make it work. And
Yes.
it's not so much solving story problems, because that's for the writers to do. I'm not gonna go in there and like rewrite lines or like, you know, change the story, change the narrative. That's not for me. But if you give me a script and if you give me a script and that script has parameters, I can work within that parameters to give you something that is entertaining.
Yeah.
And that's kind of become basically, in a way, it's like that's what people hire me to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And and that was kind of what happened on Puss in Boots, because you're not allowed to stray from the script. You need to stick with the script, but they go like, this is not entertaining enough. So what part of my job is to continue to figure out like, okay, well, this is a really boring conversation sequence. What can I do to at least make it passable? You
Yeah,
don't
I
want
used
to.
to I used to be the one that like they would give a boring sequence, like say it's like a video phone call that two characters are having. I
Right.
used to be the one that they were like, this scene this scene sucks.
Yeah.
Can you make it funny? And so then I would say, okay, like what if one of them's trying to figure out their phone and accidentally putting
Yeah.
filters on the
It's
other character, or
Yeah.
like they're like getting ready but they're messing their
So
makeup while they're talking, or yeah.
you're still coming up with things, but it's within the parameter of what it
Yes,
Yeah.
is.
yes.
And that's something that I became really good at, because that
Yeah.
was the restriction on Puss in Boots. And
Mhm.
and that's why like when so my boards shorts have always been successful because it's very entertaining, and even like boring conversation sequence, like I always manage to find a way to at least like post out the acting a little bit, give a little bit of charming drawing here and there, just to kind of like carry the audience through the animatic type of thing. And that's why, like, when that directing position opened up, they were like, let's promote him to director. And that kind of became my job, and that's that kind of what got me started. So I started directing on Puss in Boots, and then I started directing on Puss in Boots. I was directing on Puss in Boots for about 2.5 years, or is it a year and a half? I can't remember anymore. I think a year and a half. And then I got an offer to go to Disney to direct on Big Hero 6. And I loved the movie. And I had been like, if they ever made a series of this, I want in. And it's funny also how that, when I can talk about how one job leads to another job later. But like, I moved to Disney. I started directing on Big Hero 6, season 1, season 2. And then halfway through season 2, the show got so busy that the supervising director had to focus on something else, because the show did not have a supervising director. They had an EP. They had a third EP who also covers the supervising director job. So because the show got really complex, they asked the EP to just focus on the EP job, and I moved up to supervising director. So I became supervising director Big Hero 6 season 2. I continued through season 3, and then Moon Girl came in development, and they asked me to help out get the show out of development. So I jumped on it. I made a proof of concept that pretty much became the tone of the show. And when the show got greenlit, I started as supervising director, which is my job in season 1, continuing that. And then season 2 got greenlit, and I became a co-producer. So it's pretty much it's been climbing up the ladder. A little too fast for me, I feel like.
No, but it also goes to show that, like, you always go above and beyond, right? It's like when you get your script, you don't just do the script. You like try to plus it, you make it more fun. And also, I'm guessing
it has to be fun for me as well, because otherwise, like, I get bored,
Right, 100%. And I also wonder, I was going to ask you, like, do you feel like, because this is a question that I love to ask, because do you feel like it was only through your work, or that you got also promoted, like, from director to supervising director to co-producer? Or do you feel like you also made friends with, like, I don't know, like executives, or like even like the line producer? Or like, do you feel like you also had to foster relationships that were not just you working on your storyboards?
I think definitely. I think the answer to those questions are all yes. I think it's just that I think the reality is this: when you are doing the work, my philosophy has always been that. So my philosophy, going back to like the revisionist position and the storyboard position and then directing position, my philosophy has always been I need to be not the worst at that position. So that way, if anyone gets fired, it would not be me.
It's like when you're like running from a monster. Like, I just have to be faster than the last guy. Oh my God.
So you're not the last person, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like to give yourself a little bit more credit, I feel like there's probably a way to talk about this that's almost in line with the theme of creative block, which is like working through problems. Like when you're going up the ranks and hopping onto shows that fast, did you come up against some hard like on certain shows, like you don't get the style right away, and you're adapting to these new styles and new drawing styles and directing styles.
Absolutely.
Like, what did you do to work through that?
Well, so that's a different question. The one advice that I have been given is that whenever you get on a show, either you become the rock star on that show, or there is already an established rock star on that show. And if there is already an established rock star on that show, then you should look at the rock star and kind of do what they do, kind of be like a light rock star, you know? That's always been what I was told back then, like in terms of like, how do you survive the industry? And going back to what I was saying earlier about just trying not to be the worst, the problem is that on like skeleton crews like that, there's usually only two positions. So if you're not the worst, then you're the best one.
So you're telling me that you have to learn how to
Yeah.
Can you give a rocking tutorial? Like how do you become a rock star? In a studio. This is like a whole different conversation that I think we've ever had before.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's just like even though I stumbled into animation and storyboarding, I find a lot of love in it. Like I really, really like what I do. And a lot of people have said, Ben, you are a workaholic because you work all the time. But the thing is, like, you know, some people like to travel, some people like to go to the beach, some people like to go to a concert. These are the things that make them happy, right? I think throughout my journey in this industry, I think I've come to realize more and more and more that I am happiest when I'm making stuff. I am happiest when I'm making something, you know, be it a storyboard, be it just a drawing. I mean, V, you do Rodney. Nobody's paying you to do Rodney. You do it because you love doing it, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, like for me, it's just like I stumbled to this, but I fall in love with the craft itself. I love filmmaking. I love sitting in editorial and figuring out where the cut should be. I love boarding and figuring out whether I should cut or I should keep my character acting. Like I just get really into it. So ultimately, you know, when I was a revisionist, I made sure that because I love the work, I just kind of like, I'm gonna learn how to be a good revisionist because I am enjoying the work. When I moved into boards, I go, I'm gonna learn to be a good board artist because I'm enjoying the work. And I'll be honest, I don't find enjoyment in like going to a bar and drinking with people or like going to concert or going to the beach. Like sometimes I do need to rest, but people don't believe me when I say this, but I am at my least stressed when I'm in front of a computer drawing.
That makes sense though. I feel like you do have to love being in front of a computer.
That's
right?
That's how it's always been for me. Back then when I was selling at Artist Alley and making those one-piece fan art, I did everything traditionally. So I'd be sitting on my drafting table with pen and ink and Copics, and I would be drawing nonstop for like weeks because I love drawing. So and it's actually a lot more stress-free for me doing that than to say like have to go to a place that's really crowded. You know, I keep talking about concerts and stuff like that. It's just because that's an easy example. But
because it's like loud. There's a lot of people. Yeah, it's like very tiring.
You prefer being a rock star in the studio, not on the stage.
Definitely not on the stage. I am not a stage person. But ultimately, it's just like this is what I always say, right? All of our journey in this industry, it's not so much like to become a better artist or like for success or fame or to get a show or to win awards. But I think the big journey for everyone individually is to really figure out who they are.
That
as
is
a person.
So deep and true and very sweet.
Only when people figure out who they are can they truly work towards something that makes them truly happy. And for a lot of people, and that's the thing, people's path to happiness is all different because different people have different things that can make them happy. And for myself, again, a lot of people say I'm wrong and they don't believe me, but I am happiest when I am working. I'm happiest when I am creating something. And so I continue to do it. And that's something that I've learned about myself, because back then I did have a lot of questions. Like, people keep telling me like, oh, you work too hard, you should take a break, you should go traveling, you should do this, you should find a hobby, you should try that, you should try this. And I did. And the reality is that none of those were making me happy as much as, sadly, sitting in front of a computer and drawing. Because that's kind of like, that's me. And I think my 10-year journey kind of just landed me into this place where it's like, I accept this. I accept that this is what makes me happy. And I hope, and it's not what makes other people happy, but I do hope other people find their own happiness. I think the problem is that a lot of people look at other people and go, that other person is doing this, so I must do that too so that I can be happy. But that's not their true happiness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like
Right,
the
right.
experience that you've had that some other people haven't had is going down the road of this completely different career path. Like, there's a lot of people that go right into art,
Yeah.
college, out of high
Yeah.
school, and then right into trying to get a job, and they never try anything else. So maybe, they have, maybe they take it for granted a little bit.
Oh,
Maybe
I mean-
you
Yeah.
did this other thing that you didn't end up enjoying.
I mean, and that's the thing. I don't think it's bad to fail, because
Yeah.
the path that I followed in physics, that was a failure of a path. Like, I really hit a point where it's like something that I've dedicated, a couple of years of high school, 4 years of college, 2 years of grad school, 3 years of 2 years of grad school. I've dedicated all that time towards something that did not create anything for me. It did not set me up for anything. It did not set me up for any sort of success. And I feel like once you hit rock bottom like that, it kind of becomes freeing, because you've already failed.
It's like, what's the worst they could do?
That could happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes a lot more freeing. And I'm always looking for myself. I'm always trying to figure out what is the thing that makes me happy. And if I do something and I don't enjoy it, then I'm not gonna keep doing it, even if people are telling me that it's good for me.
Yeah.
But if I do something and it makes me happy, even if people say, no, don't do that, it's bad for you. But if it makes me happy, then I'm gonna keep doing it, because it's good for it. It's also good for my mental health.
Yeah.
Except for like gambling or like drugs.
Except for like okay, maybe I should caveat that. Do the thing that makes you happy, that is not destructive to you or other people.
Like, like when you really like doing murders, or you really like plotting kidnapping people, or like, and it gives you an endorphin rush that nothing else gives you and makes you feel alive, like, and you love it.
Yeah, thankfully I am not a psychopath.
So nice to finally have not a psychopath on this show.
Oh my god, that's so funny. But that's so true though. I feel it is true. Like it's it's hard to figure out what really makes you happy, because we grow up in like a system that like is like made up of so many rules. And so I think there's like so many rules to follow all the time. I think I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit, because so you're talking about things that make you happy, and you say you love creating. But I feel like going from boards to co-producing, that's like a completely different job. And is there anything that you miss, like being like a co-producer, compared to like doing boards? Or like, how do you find the different avenues? Because I'm asking this question because I hear a lot of people when they move up to like directing, they're like, oh, well, I don't draw as much.
Yes.
And they miss it. So kind of what's your take on that a little bit?
What makes me move up to producing? Because even though I love what I do, like when you move up, you're no longer doing what you do. That is absolutely true. I always say, like, as you move up, you don't do the things anymore. You just watch people do things.
Right. Yeah.
So that's actually a little bit adjacent. In my 10 years of journey, the motivation started from, I could not get a job in physics. I stumbled into animation. I got a job as a revisionist. Great. So at the back then, the motivation had been, I just want to have to make sure I'm not the worst one, so I don't get fired first. And it kind of moved up to become. I like what I do. I want to get better at what I do. I want to get better at what I do. And then eventually, at some point, having been in the industry for like a good 5-6 years, I had been on shows with different kinds of problems. There are shows with shows that are just low budget, right? And really, really tight schedule, because that's the amount of money that they have. I was on Spidey season 2 as a revisionist. When we got to season 3, what I heard was that in order for them to secure the job from Marvel, Norfolk Film Roman, to secure the job from Marvel, they had to really, really underbid. And so for season 2, we had 2 board artists per team and 1 revisionist. For season 3, they only had 1 board artist per team, because they basically had to bid even lower in order to get that job.
And that is crazy for an action show.
Yeah,
That is nuts.
So my assignment back then was 2 weeks rough, 2 weeks clean, 15 pages to draw.
Right. Yeah.
Because
That
I was
sounds
the only board artist.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to kind of what it's like in Europe, which is those schedules are not fun. They're not fun.
So I moved from that to DreamWorks TV, which also had a pretty tough schedule. The problem there is a little bit different, because on Spidey, we're just making superhero shows, and it's kind of like standards. So no one's like, we have to make the best thing possible. No one's doing that. And so even though the schedule is tight, it's kind of just like churning out boards, You can be creative, you can kind of like do something more mid, and it will be fine. But when I moved to DreamWorks TV, they had a lot of ambition. They want this to be like this. We want this to be like award winning. We want to make this. We want to make every episode like a movie. It's that kind of stuff. And the problem over there was that the ambition is high, the resources are low. And so I started to get into these situations where I'm seeing things like there's different kinds of shows, different kinds of expectations, different kinds of leadership. And a lot of the things that I'm experiencing kind of trickle down from above. So I left DreamWorks TV on Puss in Boots because the ambition and the expectations became too much. And the resources wasn't meeting that.
Right.
And it was hard for me. It was hard for me because I loved what I do. I love the people that I'm working with. I love the show that I'm making, but it was killing me, and it was killing everyone that I work with. So at some point, it's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Right?
Yeah.
When I moved to Disney, it was different. They actually have resources to meet the ambition. So that's kind of the stuff that kind of really get me interested of I want to be involved more in that kind of stuff, because if I'm involved in these kinds of things, then I can truly help create an environment where where people like me don't have to go through all that. Because there were times back then where it's like I am suffering and nobody is helping, because that's just how it is. And the thing is, nobody can help you because everyone is suffering.
Right, exactly. Everyone's cup is already completely filled, and so no one has any room to give any help because it's already everything's on fire.
The directors are feeling pressure, so they're taking it out on the people under them.
And I've had several of those where I was in a director position. I had a lot of pressure, so I find myself kind of like taking it out on my artists, because it's like, no, you need to do this because I'm under pressure too. And the thing is, the people from above me are pressuring me because they're also under pressure. Do you know what I mean? Right. It just and it just creates an environment that I don't like. And every time, we complain about that, people always say, well, that's just how it is. This industry is abusive, the system is broken, and and they're not wrong. But there's a part of me that's like, well, how do we change it?
Right.
How do we change it? We do have the union, but the union can't tell studios how to set budgets,
Exactly. That's really
right?
interesting.
So the only way, I feel like, to me, everyone has their own ways, right? To me, my way is that I need to be, I need to get myself to a position where I can have a voice in fixing this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
as much as I can, I'm gonna try to fix it from within. And so this is why like I noticed that as soon as I get to director and then I get supervising director, I'm getting more and more people listen to me. My voice matters more. And it's just a matter of what I do with the voice, right? I can use my voice to abuse other people, or I can use that voice to kind of leverage for better environment. And that kind of became, because again, I've been in shows where I wasn't having a good time. I've been in shows where I'm constantly working nights and weekends to meet deadlines, and my biggest thing is just that I don't want this to happen to anyone else. I don't want this to happen to people if I can do something about it, because I just don't like that whole thing of like, this is just how it is. The industry is just broken, and I I don't think I can fix the entire industry, but at least I can fix the show that I'm on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a specific example, by the way, of maybe something where there was a problem and it took someone like you to be able to like sort of speak up about it
Well,
to
not
help?
so much a problem, but like, for example, like I was a director on Big Hero 6, and Big Hero 6 had a much better schedule than when I was at DreamWorks. So I was having a good time. And sometimes I think the temptation is that, so we were on a 6-week schedule, 3 weeks rough, 3 weeks clean, right?
Mhm.
And the way things always work is that, well, you have 3 weeks to rough it out, and then you go into a pitch on Monday of the 4th week, and then you have 3 weeks to clean it up, and then you go and then you turn it in the Friday of the 6th week, right? Like, that's just the deadline set. And if you're, as a director, if your artist cannot meet that, say like, oh, it's the Thursday of the 3rd week, they're supposed to turn in stuff tomorrow for a pitch Monday, but they're so behind. Sometimes you would go, well, I don't care. You just have to meet it.
Mm.
Even if you work weekends, you just have to do it. Are they getting paid overtime? No, right? There's sometimes it's like that. Or you can say, oh, you need the weekends to work as well. Let me check with the producer to see if we can get you paid overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, that's your job as a director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your job as a director is to manage that. Do you say, okay, well, if you're not gonna be able to finish your assignments for Monday, then that's fine. Turn in as much as you can on Friday. On Monday, when we pitch it, we'll tell them, oh, it's missing one sequence, but we'll take care of it in the cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go to your producer and say, hey, I need this person to finish their assignment, but they're gonna need the Saturday as well. Can we get them overtime paid? That's your job as a director. And I didn't even know that a director can do that, because my directors never had done that. My directors,
People are scared of sticking their neck out. Yeah.
Right.
and the thing is, that's the thing. It's not about sticking your neck out. It's just asking sometimes. Because you can go to your producer and ask that, and the worst they can say is, no, we can't pay overtime. And then you say, okay, that's fine. So Monday when we pitch, it's just going to be missing a sequence, but don't worry. When we get to the next stage, the sequence will be there.
You know what's great about what you're saying is something that I kind of realized very late. It was when I was on the wings, and I was talking to the supervising director and the EP, and often they would have to have these conversations where they have to frame the work before it gets pitched. So it's always kind of like, this is what we're gonna look at, and these are the things that you can expect in terms of finish, and these are the areas where we want to get notes. And it was the first time in my career I ever saw that, and I think that's so great, because what you just said kind of pings on that, where it's like, well, this is what we can show, and this is what's going to happen. This is our plan. These are a couple of parameters we can change. You can pick and choose which parameter you want to change.
Exactly. And that's kind of a lot of the problem. A lot of people are expecting the first time they see it to be absolutely perfect. And if it's not perfect, it's a failure. And that's an attitude that trickles down from above. So if you have a show and your showrunner is like that, everything has to be perfect the first time, and everyone's going to suffer, because nothing is perfect the first time. That's why we have several stages of screenings. That's why we have a pitch and then a cleanup, that's why we have check-ins, because it's not going to be perfect the first time. And I did not realize that as a director, you have a voice in negotiating that. That is also part of the job, to negotiate that. Because when I was an artist, when I was a board artist, my directors never did that. They would just say, sorry, that's a deadline, so you're just gonna have to do it.
Right.
And as an artist, I didn't even have the balls to ask, if I gotta get paid overtime. I didn't have the guts to say that. I was scared, right? And what I want to make sure is that now that I'm in a position where I have the power and the voice to negotiate with the producer and the studio, I gotta use it. I gotta use it so that my artists don't have to suffer through all of that. And the crazy thing is, you can negotiate. It is not hard. Like the scenario that I was mentioning earlier. Okay, we don't want to pay artists overtime. That's fine. Then the pitch Monday will just be super rough, and it'll be missing sequence 14 and sequence 7. But we know what we're gonna do with those sequences, so we'll revisit those sequences at the cleanup stage, or we'll revisit it at the first screening. And if it's still not working, then we'll figure it out then. And when you just say that, no showrunner is going to be, how dare you pitch without sequence 7 and 14? It's like, it's a rough pitch, buddy. Like, it'll be there eventually. It's not like we don't pitch it and then it never gets made. You know what I mean? Right? So I realized that as a director, I actually have voice. I actually have the ability to negotiate that. And then, so I started doing that because I wanted to make sure that the people that work for me aren't dying. We all know how rough the schedules can be. And then when I moved up to supervising director, that gave me even more voice. Now I can negotiate with executives. I can go into screenings and just basically go like, hey, this sequence here is still not working, but that's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll get it to work. Please give us notes on just these other things, And a lot of that is, of course, going back to what we talked about earlier, which is relationship, right? I learned that when I was an artist, it always feels like production is the enemy. But a producer is the enemy, that they are the bad guys setting deadlines and this and that, and they can fire you and they can punish you. And then when I got to Disney and I started on Big Hero, I actually started developing a good relationship with my producer. I started going to them and just like talking about my problems and basically asking, I have this problem, how do we fix it? Or there's going to be this issue, I just want to flag you this. And from there, the producer and I became really we built a good relationship to a point where they would come to me for basically consultations, and I would go to them for consultations. It makes things also easier to negotiate. I also started building relationships with studio execs, so that way when it's like, oh yeah, this episode's not ready, can we just push the screening back a week?
Oh, that's really cool. I love
it's
that.
Amazing.
It's
amazing how they're just like, oh yeah, sure, we can delay it to next week. Because ultimately, the deadlines that you can't miss is the shipping deadline, right? But if you push the first screening back a week, all you're doing is eating up time between first and second screening, but it's not pushing the ship date back.
Mhm.
So you start going into more of that negotiation of like, oh, the team needs another week. Can we just push this back 1 week? You guys won't be seeing this episode this week. It's not ready. You guys will see it next week. And surprisingly, just saying that, because people are always scared, right? People are always scared when they're given deadlines, and to say, hey, we won't be able to meet this deadline. It always sounds like a failure. Like it always sounds like your job's on the line. But the truth is, if you just ask, if you just ask, like, can we just push it back a week, or at least give us 2 more days? Let's screen on a Wednesday instead of a Monday, type of thing. You'd be surprised that some people are like, yeah, I don't see why that's an issue. You're not paying people any more money.
Yeah.
You're not losing money. You just push it back a week. Sure, you lose time on the back end, but and this goes back to the other thing. You lose time on the back end. So like if something doesn't work out, you have less time to fix it, right? So that's kind of my experience on Big Hero, where we are able to kind of adjust the schedule, but we would lose time on the back end. And that was my learning from it. So when I went to Moon Girl, when I first started on Moon Girl, the first thing I did was to go talk to the person who's going to be the producer on Moon Girl, which is Pilar Flynn. She's become a good friend and one of my mentors. And basically, I talked to Pilar, and I basically said, look, here's my experience on Big Hero. Sometimes artists need more time. And because artists need more time, we don't usually have a problem pushing things back a week. However, because that ship date there is a deadline we can't miss, we always run out of time on the back end. And it always ends up eating up time on the back end. So can we have a schedule where we have built-in cushions?
Oh, nice.
Can we have a schedule where we have built-in cushions, so that way if something does get pushed back a week and it eats up into, the next stage, guess what? Turns out there is cushion for that. Isn't it great? Wouldn't it be great to have a schedule that accounts for these kinds of issues?
So do you view it as like realizing that these higher ups or these producers aren't boogeymen, or do you view it as like, okay, you're Perseus, you're like in ancient Greek mythology learning to face the Hydra, and you come up and you're like, hey, can we get an extension? And they're like, no, everyone is fired. Or like is that what everyone's worried about?
I think it's realizing that you're not fighting a Hydra. From the outside of the cave, you see a Hydra shadow.
Oh,
but when you actually enter the cave and you start having a conversation, you realize it's just another person.
Yeah.
Wait,
you're like, hey, can we get an extension? And he's like,
okay, that's fine.
I think that one is a Greek metaphor, though. Which one is like the cave, Plato's cave, or something? Where like you see,
I don't know. I'm not an expert.
There's one. I was like, I would have. Oh man, I was so close. It's like the thing where like you only see the shadows, but like if you turn around, it's like
it's like there's a whole new world outside, and you can only perceive what you can see, and once you go outside,
right.
Yeah.
And we're cultured here. We're very cultured.
Well, this is also why the relationship is important.
Yeah.
If I come into a show and the first thing I did with this person that I don't know and have had no relationship with is to say, hey, we need more time and money.
Right.
The person's gonna look at me and go like, who the fuck are you?
Right.
I need money. I want money right now.
Same thing. If someone at the studio that I don't know comes up to me and said like, hey, take me out to lunch. Pay for my lunch. I'd be like, who the fuck are you?
No, you have to learn how to. You have to say it like Oliver Twist. Like, can I have some more, please, sir? Can I have some more porridge, some gruel?
Once you build some relationship with the person, it's a mutual thing, right? Like V, you and I, like we have mutual respect. So when I come to you and say and talk to you about certain things, you're gonna listen to me because you have respect for me. Similarly, you come to me and you talk about certain things, I will listen to you because I have respect for you.
Mm-hmm.
What
So
about me? Do you
ultim-
guys have respect for me?
None for
Um,
you, Sean. No.
Eventually, Sean, you gotta earn it.
No, but what about me?
I'm
Okay, so
joking.
I'm viewing you a little bit as a giant hydra right now that I have to conquer.
This Hydra has lost all of its heads. So,
No, I'm
but
joking, Sean.
yeah.
You have all the respect. You're so. This is
I'm
turning
like,
into like
I'm
something
left
completely.
out. Everyone's respecting each other so much on the podcast.
But that's also exactly my point, right? When we first started this podcast, I don't know you, Sean. You don't know me. But now that we've talked for a little bit, we have some sort of relationship. So if we talk again,
And I can ask you for money.
You can ask me for money.
And now I
Exactly.
can ask you for money now.
And I will in a friendly tone say no.
Ben, I need an extension and money.
About relationships though, I think that's something that's always kind of like, I don't know, like almost like a hard like kind of nut to crack, in the sense that how do you in the workplace, I've read a bunch of books like how to win friends and influence people, emotional intelligence and all that, but like, do you kind of like at work carve out time in your day to like go say hi to everyone, or like what's your kind of how do you foster these relationships? Do you like email people to be like, hey, let's have lunch? Like what's your little secret
a lot of questions there. So yes, absolutely. When I was a board artist, I kind of just kept to myself.
right.
When I moved up to director, I make sure that I am accessible, and I make sure that people feel comfortable coming to me, because that's the thing. This is the power play, right?
Mhm.
You now have the power. When you don't have the power, of course you're gonna be scared of doing anything. I was scared of doing things as a board artist. But the thing is, as I moved up to director, I wanted to make sure that my board artists aren't scared of me.
Mhm.
Right? So I would set up, time with them just to make sure so they can be comfortable, so they can eventually become more and more comfortable with me.
Mhm.
And then as I move up, even as a director, at least at Disney, like I appreciate Disney as a studio, because the culture is basically they value you. At least my experience, other people may have different experiences, but my experience so far is that they value the studio execs and like the leadership and the show leadership. They so far value you, for me at least, they value you as a human being. So it really is just me kind of overcoming my fear to email someone who is a VP to just go, hey,
yeah.
do you want to get some coffee? I would love to chat.
Mhm.
And my first couple of years, I don't do that. Of course, I'm scared. But as you establish yourself, this is why it's also important to be able to stay at a studio for a length of time instead of getting laid off every 9 months and have to find a new job.
Mhm.
You kind of start to build that confidence of like, yeah, sure, I'll just email this person, and let's get coffee. I used to so back at Disney, when we were still at the Empire campus, I know the execs would be there. So the execs are mainly at Sonora, a different campus, but they would go to Empire on Wednesdays to, for screenings, for notes and all that stuff. So on Wednesdays, I would just make sure to go down to the third floor lobby more frequently and get some coffee for myself in case someone's out there, just so I can be like, hey, how's it going? Just to say hi.
Nice.
And it doesn't even have to be like, hey, I want to say hi because I want to build a relationship with you.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like when I at Lightbox, I saw your table and I was like, hi V, just want to say hi, buy a book, done. Like it's because the thing is, I think ultimately at the end of the day, even if you are a revisionist or a producer or a studio exec, everyone just wants to find a genuine connection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nobody, I mean, there are people who are robots, but they're such in a minority. Most people just wants to have a genuine connection. And the problem is that because of the nature of our industry, people don't really know when a connection is genuine or if the connection is just like, I am making a connection with you because you are beneficial to me in the future.
Right.
Hi, yes,
right.
I would like to have that relationship bond that you've been forming with me handed in by 5 o'clock today on my desk. Thank you.
Exactly. And people don't want that, right? And so
Yeah.
I think it's just important to nurture this genuine connection, because that's all everyone wants. That's all I want. That's all you want. That's all they want. And just to approach all of this with the idea that I'm just here to form a genuine connection. And the reality is that kind of stuff, you never know when it's going to pay off, if it ever is going to pay off, but at the very least, you have a genuine connection, and that matters more than anything.
Right.
I remember an example. So I'm a big fan of Avatar. I'm a big fan of Legend of Korra. One time, a friend got us to I think it was Legend of Korra like show at Gallery Nucleus, and Mike and Brian was there, and our friend is good friends with Mike and Brian, so they're kind of like, yeah, come over, let's go chat with Mike and Brian. So I was like, this is it. I gotta present myself well, so maybe in the future they can hire me. Oh man, the most awkward conversation, because we just don't click. And I was trying to force a conversation because I was like, oh, this is it. Like, I get to meet like these creators, these people who are making the shows that I love and I want to be on. And I forced it, and it wasn't organic, it wasn't natural. So it just wasn't working. And you kind of get away from that. I left that night and I was like, wow, that was really awkward.
Yeah, how do you deal with it? I'm like,
I don't think they'll remember me after that.
Okay.
Because it was just like, it was not successful. This was years and years and years ago, right?
Okay.
I was still kind of just like trying something and it wasn't working. Now I'm kind of realizing that, because I went into it thinking that, oh, if I make connections with them, I may get hired in the future. They may know who I am. And that's the wrong way of approaching it. If you want to talk to them, you talk to them as like, hey, dude, love the stuff, love this. How'd you, like, approach it as like a real person.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Not an opportunist.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you like get over that fear of like, I don't know, making a fool out of yourself? That's something I'm like,
just kind of like people who are scared of reaching a certain age and feeling like they haven't done anything. Once you do it, once you fail once, it can't get any worse.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, and here's the funny thing. Avatar Studios reached out recently, and of course, I'm very happy where I'm at right now, and I have a lot of opportunities here, so we just have a conversation. But basically, they said like, "Oh, Mike and Brian love your stuff," and I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's something that they just say, but I'm gonna take it at face value. And to me, it just kind of goes to show, even if that meeting at Gallery Nucleus years and years ago was awkward and did not leave an impression or whatever, the fact that if you just keep continuing to do good work,
yeah,
people will eventually notice. And again, I think it all kind of goes back to work on yourself, figure out who you are, figure out what you like, figure out what you want to do, figure out what makes you happy, and at some point, and make genuine connection with people. And at some point, they will come to you. At some point, they will see you for who you are, because you are a genuine person. Otherwise, you'll just always be seen as an opportunist.
Yeah, this is all very true. I wanted to find a really clever segue, but I don't have one on my brain. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Here, pretend that you're coming up to him, you're a new fan, and you're coming up to him about to ask some fan questions.
Yes.
How about that?
Sean, you're a master. Wow. So, questions from our patrons asking, Uh, Honestly, how are you doing? And are you making sure to take breaks and play some Ace Attorney? LOL. It's from your pal Derek Malik Johnson.
Oh, Derek's wonderful. I do take breaks. I do take breaks, and my way of taking breaks is that I either get on my Switch to play some FIFA and just destroy the other team, or I just lie down on the couch and stare at the ceiling, because my line of work, even though I'm not, I still bored. I mean, I'm sure as a director you still bored as well, V.
Yeah,
because you're fixing stuff, right? So
right.
Everything kind of has to go through you, and you're kind of fixing as much as you can. So every day I'm still watching animatics, watching boards, constantly watching things. So at night, I can't watch things anymore. I don't watch TV shows anymore. I don't watch movies anymore because that just feels like more work for me. And when I need a break, it really means like a break from like visual stimulation.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
This is why, like, when people are like, "Oh, have you seen this? Have you watched that new episode of this?" Or like, "Have you seen that movie?" Like, I always feel really bad because the answer is always no. Like it's not even that I don't want to. It's just I can make the time. Anyone can make the time. It's just that like it does not let me have a break, because I'm watching things nonstop, 10, 12 hours a day, reviewing animatics, redoing boards, stuff like that. And I come home and I have to watch things again. Like, it just doesn't work.
Sometimes what I've found is helpful is sort of like an eye palate cleanser. I usually use crying.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like eating, having some ginger in between each sushi roll or something like that. You're cleansing your palate a little bit. You're getting ready for the next experience. And so crying does that for me. It sort of wipes the slate clean. I just try to cry in the bathroom stall every day.
That's good, Sean. That means you're in touch with your emotions, and that's always good.
I love it. The NPR voice. Ben, if you got to create an anime-inspired series from Disney TVA, which series would you try to make? One Piece inspired, or a a fusion of Ace Attorney and Detective Conan? This is also from your pal Derek.
Oh my God, Derek needs to stop asking questions.
Now, before answering this, would you hire this fan if they came up to you and said that based on this bonding first impression?
It depends on their work. I don't know. Anime inspired series. I don't know, to be honest, because I will be honest, I don't watch a lot of anime. and I will say this here, because this is not as public as Twitter, but like I think people kind of peg me wrong as like the anime action person, because
really?
I don't watch a lot of anime. I have not seen a single episode of One Piece anime. I read the manga.
But you read the manga. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
so
like,
more of a reading person. Okay.
I'm more of a reading person. Yeah.
You were at Anime Expo. I was like, how do you not watch anime or read manga if you're at Anime X?
I was at Anime Expo to sell One Piece fan art, and that's it.
Ben's just been keeping this ruse up for years, and like just somebody pegged him as that, and he was like, I'm too polite to correct them, and now everybody's just like, you love anime, and you're like, I sure do.
I think people really do form like impressions of other people, and I think whenever people form an impression of me, like, I think most of the time they get it wrong. I think anime is cool. I think I'm glad that the influence from anime is, kind of permeating through the industry. I think a lot of people are able to use their anime influence more and more in this industry. But if I were to create an original show, sure, there's got to be some anime influence in it, just because like I grew up with manga, but it's hard for me to say like what kind of anime inspired show do I want to make, because truth be told, I don't watch a lot of anime to be able to answer that. all of my coworkers are talking about Chainsaw Man right now, and I still have not seen an episode. I read all the manga though, so
Yeah, I actually, I don't know. I like manga better than the anime usually. I feel like because they have more time. I feel like the
Well,
anime
you're
is
also a comic person. You make
Yeah.
and that's kind of the thing. That's kind of the thing, V. Like I am
Mhm.
also first and foremost a comic person. Because like when I first started, it was manga. When I was young, it was reading manga.
Mm.
And this is why I never even heard about the animation industry. Because to me, it's like if I'm doing anything with art, I'll be a manga artist.
Yeah, we're the same.
Yeah, we're very similar in that
When
sense.
can we expect to see some more Ben Juwono comics?
Oh
Yeah.
God, when I finally get fired from Disney.
Nice.
Okay, so I think we
I'll
know
put in
what
a
we
bad
have
word
to
for
do.
you.
Yeah.
That's called retirement. If I'm lucky, that'll be called retirement. Because like imagine that. That's like the goal these days, to be able to work somewhere until you're retired.
Yeah, I'll pick a fight with a Hydra wearing a Ben disguise, and I'm like, okay, you take over the fight. I hand it to you.
We have a lot of great questions on Twitter. I'm gonna shout out the names of people who actually wrote questions, but not read all of them just because we're running a little short on time. But we had a great question from at Flippy Super. We had from at Zara Fazal. We had a question from at KB Wolf 0112, from at Tori Roar, at A11Y underscore cat, and from at Hebon M. I am going to read this question because I think it's pretty interesting.
Sure.
What was it like working on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, seeing how unique the art style of the show is?
It's been an amazing experience. It's been 4 years now since I started in development. And the show's coming out in February. So I'm super happy that people finally get to watch it. We've lived with this for 4 years and can't show anyone. You know how that feels.
4 years, that is a long time. You know what's
Yeah.
crazy? Like, I feel like Thundercats Roar, when I worked on that, it came out so fast. I feel like it was just
That's
a
how it
year.
is usually in TV.
Yeah.
But again, Moon Girl is a very unique. Moon
Mm.
Girl is a very unique thing. There's a lot of things that we need to get right. There's a lot of things that did not happen at the right time. We had struggle like finding an animation studio that can
Right.
capture the style, because we are also trying to create something that is different. That was kind of the mandate. We wanted to, let's make something that is different. That was the mandate. And that's why I got on the show, because if they had come to me and said like, oh, this show is just going to be like that on a show, I probably wouldn't have as much of an interest. But because they come to me and said, this is going, the exact words that Steve, the showrunner, had pitched to me when trying to get me into development to help with this was, I want to make Baby Driver but animated.
Oh, that is cool.
And that was the thing that just kind of got me, hell yeah. Because in animation, you make the visuals first and then you put the music last. After you have all the visuals, the picture's locked, you send it to your composer puts the score and all that stuff, and then you get your final episode. And what he was proposing was, what if we can have a show where we get the music first, and then we use the music to board the episode. We use the music to basically inform our episode. So basically, it's like a music video per episode.
That's so tight.
And I'm like, I am in. I don't know how this is gonna work. It's gonna be really hard, but it's different. Right. It's different. It's something I've never done. It's something I would like to try, and we did. I made a proof of concept that you will see in one of the episodes. I'm not gonna spoil it. But I made a proof of concept that basically got everyone excited, because it's proof that yes, this can work. And it's just, how do we make a whole season out of this? And how do we make sure that this is sustainable? And shout out to my entire crew, because when we first started in development and we showed the pilot and all that stuff, I think there was a lot of a lot of people are like, oh my God, this is so different. This is so refreshing. How are they going to keep this up for the season? Right? Sometimes you see, sometimes you watch shows where like, oh, the main title looks amazing, and then the show is just kind of like so.
Yeah.
And we kind of don't want it to be that. And because there was that expectation, Lawrence Fishburne and Helen Sutherland are attached as an EP, so we got to make sure the quality stays high and all that stuff. There's a lot of there's a lot of expectation and ambition. But again, shout out to my team, because they took that proof of concept and everyone ran with it to a point where now the proof of concept that I was really proud of when I made it, now it just looks dated. I look at it and I go,
that's
man,
gonna
you
be
guys
so
did so much
dissatisfying.
better. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
sad, but it is absolutely satisfying, because that means like you made something that inspired others to make it even better. And I could not have asked for more. I don't want my stuff. I don't want that proof of concept from 4 years ago to be the best looking thing there. No, I want that to be the base.
Right.
And that was the ambition. And that ambition was met by the talent on the crew, and that ambition was met by the resources of the studio and support from everyone. And it's a very unique show, and it's been a blast to be a part of.
Honestly, if people listening to this podcast aren't hyped about Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur now,
What's wrong with you?
This sounds so much fun. Like,
get
so
your
much
brain
fun.
checked.
I'm like so excited to see the show come out.
Yay! We'll have two viewers. Excellent. At least two. Four with me and my wife. We'll be watching too.
No. I'm gonna pirate it. So just
Please
one.
don't.
No, I'm just joking.
Whole different conversation there. Whole different conversation.
No. I'm just joking.
To wrap this up nicely, I'm gonna ask you the one question that always comes back on the show. It is about creative block. And do you experience it? How does it feel like, and how do you deal with it?
I do hit walls all the time, and this is why it's important for everyone to have a support network. This is why writers have their own writers group where they workshop ideas. This is why comedians have close friends that they workshop their comedy ideas to. And I think for people like us who are constantly making episodes, I think it's important to remember, when you do hit a dead end, when you do hit a wall, that it is not your responsibility to come up with all the answers. And this is important for leadership as well. It is not your responsibility to come up with all the answers and the decision. And the most important thing, the best thing you can do for yourself and the success of you and the success of your crew and the success of your show and the success of the creative, is to surround yourself with people who can back you up and who can support you when you are hitting that wall. So when I have to solve a problem that an episode has, and I'm just like, I don't know how to make this work, because there's this note, there's that note, there's that demand, and I need to satisfy all the demands. I'll talk to my directors. I bring all my directors into a Zoom group, and I go like, all right, here's a problem. Do you guys have any solution? And they would chime in because they have fresher eyes, whereas I've been stuck in it. I'm like nose deep in the muck, and it's really good to have fresh eyes. And that is also what I try to do on my show. I'm kind of a control freak, so I always need to be everywhere and have like my hands in everything. But I think one thing that I've learned on Moon Girl is that the show actually benefits more from me kind of relinquishing that control and taking a step back and letting my directors be the ones who are neck deep. Because if I'm also neck deep with them in all the episodes, nobody has fresh eyes. So the best thing that I can do as leadership, supervising director, now co-producer, is that I need to take a step back and kind of almost like not know what the episode is. and let my director take it to a point where they hit a wall, and then they'll come to me and go, Ben, what do you think? And then I'll be able to help them because my eyes are fresh.
That is so interesting because we've never had this answer before, and it's so insightful. I think it's really, really cool.
When you're neck deep in something, you will always hit that block. Always, because you are, again, you can't breathe.
Yeah.
Right. So the best, and how do you overcome that? Sometimes it's hard, but the best way to overcome is to make sure you have support. You surround yourself with people who can help you get an answer. I have a block. How do I get out of this? Well, my group of 3 trusted people. What do you think we should do? And usually some of them, or a bunch of them, will come up with a collective answer that you kind of go, yes, that's it. Oh my God, that's great. Thank you so much.
And that's the beauty of animation. We're not doing it alone, and you can't do it alone.
That's the beauty of collaboration, and I think there's not enough of that. And again, granted, with the schedule, it's hard to have that collaboration, right? But that's the kind of block of like, having the kind of block of like having a problem and not being able to solve it. It's different from the kind of block of like, I am in a rut, I can't even draw today. I don't have an answer to that. I think the answer to that is like, you should talk to a therapist. Because I think that's, again, working on how do you become your true authentic self? How do you find the things that makes you happy? And I feel like once you find that, you'll have less and less of that block.
Yeah, that's really true, because we had a guest, Tyson Hess, that basically said that. He was like, oh, I love what I do every day, so I'm never blocked. I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh.
He sounds like someone who really knows himself.
He knows who he is. He knows what he's about. He knows he has his philosophy.
Yep.
That means that guy knows what makes him happy, and he does what makes him happy. And if you know, I feel like you hit a block when you're trying to do something that you think will make you happy, but you're doing it because someone else tells you it'll make you happy, or it's actually something that someone else needs to do to make them happy. If that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. I think this is a great point to wrap this up. I think that was just so much fun and so insightful, and I will say that this is the end of this creative block. Ben,
thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being our guest and sharing your story.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you. Great meeting you.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. We also have an Instagram now. It's at crtv.block. Huge thanks to our editor Clemens for editing the podcast, and Malik for helping us produce the show.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Sean.
And I was B. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Bye.